Progress monitoring fractions part 2. A focus with working with mixed numbers. It's important to remember when working with mixed numbers that you will still need to find a common denominator for addition and subtraction. In the problem 3 2/7 plus 2 1/3, we would look to see that our 7 and 3 are used to find the least common denominator of 21. So I would then next need to take and make equivalent fractions for 2/7 and 1/3. So 2/7 becomes 6/21, as we can see right here. Remember, we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same factor. And 1/3 becomes 7/21, because both 1 and 3 are multiplied by 7. So our new problem reads 3 and 6/21 plus 2 and 7/21. Then the math becomes pretty easy. You're going to take and add the whole numbers and then add your fractions together. If necessary, you could check to determine if you could simplify your fraction after you have done the addition. So we'll work through this one together. Write it down on your paper. 1 2/5 plus 2 1/6. I first need to find a least common denominator. Hopefully you'll notice that the least common denominator for 5 and 6 is quickly going to be 30. If you need to, though, you can write down your multiples of each number until you get to the first one, which would become the least common denominator. Okay. So I'm now going to change my 2/5 and 1/6 into equivalent fractions. So multiplying to get that 5 of 30, I'm going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 6. So 5 times 6 is 30, 2 times 6 is 12, not forgetting my whole number. 2, and then 6 multiplied by 5 is 30, so 1 multiplied by 5 is 5. The last step is to add my whole numbers. 1 plus 2 is 3. And then add my fractions. Remember, we only add the numerators. 12 plus 5 is 17 over 30. So the answer to 1 2/5 plus 2 1/6 is equal to 3 17/30. The same is true for subtraction. You'll need to find a common denominator, find equivalent fractions, and then you will end up subtracting the whole numbers and subtracting your fractions. So if I look at 6 and 4, I should be able to find a common denominator. And although a lot of times we like to say 6 times 4 and say, oh, the common denominator is 24, this time I should be able to find a smaller denominator than 24. So 6, 12, 18, 24, and for 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So although I see 24 for both of them, I should also notice that I see 12. So I'm going to now make my equivalent fraction. 2/6 with a denominator of 12. I should notice that that's a multiply by 2, so 2 times 2 is 4. Remembering that whole number 5, subtract 1, and then as 12 with a denominator, 4 times 3 is 12, so 1 times 3 is 3. And now I simply subtract. 5 subtract 1 is 4 wholes. 4 subtract 3 is 1 over my denominator of 12. As we begin to look at this problem, 7 and 1/4 subtract 3 and 2/6, I'm going to approach this one just a little bit differently by writing the problem up and down instead of across. So I'm going to shrink this down, move it over here, and rewrite the problem so that it looks like 7 and 1/4 subtract 3 and 2/6. Some of you may find that it's better for you to organize your work this way when working with mixed numbers. Again, I need to find a least common denominator. I need to make equivalent fractions, and then I need to subtract. All right, so looking for a common denominator, think we just used the common denominator of 12 in the last problem for 4 and 6, so that should still be true. And my whole numbers are going to stay the same. So now if I take a look here, I should be able to notice that 6 times 2 is 12, so 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 3 is 12, so 1 times 3 is 3. What you're going to notice here, though, is that my numerators don't work for subtraction easily. So remembering from last year, this is where I'm going to have to end up borrowing from that whole. So again, shrink that just a little bit here out of our way, and then pick back up with it. So now I'm looking at 7 and 3/12. That's a mistake. 7 and 3/12, subtract 3 and 4/12. I'm going to end up borrowing from that 7 to make that a 6, and since each whole has 12 in it, I'm going to add 12 to the 3, so it becomes 12 plus 3 over 12. Subtract 3 and 4/12. I hope that you're following along still. So now my problem is actually a little bit simpler. Oops. 6 and 15/12 minus 3 and 4/12. Now I finally have a subtraction problem where I can subtract my numerators. 15 subtract 4 is 11 over 12, and 6 subtract 3 is going to be 3. So the answer to the problem that we started with, what seems like a long time ago, 7 and 1/4 subtract 3 and 2/6, is actually going to give us an answer of 3 and 11/12. Once you've remembered how to work with adding and subtracting of mixed numbers, you need to focus on multiplying and dividing mixed numbers. And my hint to you is to always change those to improper fractions. In order to change a mixed number into an improper fraction, we're going to take our whole number, multiply it by the denominator, add the numerator, and that becomes your new numerator over the same denominator. So if you take a look here at the first example, I have 2 and 3/4. That becomes 2 times 4 plus 3 all over the denominator of 4. And so now I say, well, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 more is 11 over my denominator of 4. So 2 and 3/4 as an improper fraction is 11/4. For 3 and 1/7, I'm going to do 3 times 7 plus 1 all over 7. 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 more is 22 over 7. So on the last slide, we discussed 2 and 3/4 multiplied by 3 and 1/7 as two different mixed numbers. But now I want to multiply them together. So I'm going to think about using those improper fractions that we had, which was 11/4 multiplied by 22/7. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply across. 11 times 22 is going to give me 242, and 4 times 7 gives me 28. So then the last thing I have to do is now change that improper fraction to a mixed number by dividing 242 by 28. So when I get that, I end up with 8 and 18/28, or 8 and 9/14 as a simplified answer. Looking at this problem, the first thing I would do is to change to improper fractions. So 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 1 over 3 is really 16 over 3. And 2 times 9 is 18, plus that numerator of 5 over 9. And 18 plus 5 is 23 over 9. So now my problem becomes just with those improper fractions. 16/3 multiplied by 23 over 9. And I don't really like the looks of 16 times 23, but unfortunately there's no better way for us to go around that. So 16 times 23 is 368, and 3 times 9 is 27. So remember, you take your numerator and divide it by the denominator, and I get a whole number of 13. I'm skipping this step, but you guys should know how to do this. And so now 13 times 27 is 351. So remember, I can think about 368 minus 351, 7, 1. I'm left with 17/27 as a mixed number. 13 and 17/27. So if you have to divide two mixed numbers, you're basically going to follow the rules for dividing fractions. Remember, you want to change to an improper fraction first, and then change that division problem to a multiplication problem using the reciprocal of the second fraction. So in this problem, 6 and 2/7 divided by 3 and 1/4. You'll notice that I went ahead and changed both of these mixed numbers to improper fractions. 44 sevenths divided by 13/4. And then I ended up rewriting the problem. This is what's really important to remember, is this rewrite. Okay, it's that place where we change the division to a multiplication problem and use the reciprocal of the second fraction. So now we have 44 sevenths multiplied by 4/13. We end up with 176/91. And when we simplify 176/91, we would end up with 1 85/91. So for this problem, we're going to have to change our mixed numbers into improper fractions and then change this problem to a multiplication problem. So 4 and 5/6 becomes 4 times 6 plus 5 more, so that's 29/6. Divided by 2 times 5 plus 2 is 12/5. Remember, we don't like to divide fractions, so we're going to use this as 29/6 multiplied by the reciprocal 5/12. So now we have to multiply 29 times 5, 145, over 6 times 12, which is 72. The last thing you need to do is to simplify 145/72 into a mixed number. In order to do that, 145 divided by 72 is going to simplify to 2 wholes, and 72 times 2 gives me 144. So 145 minus 144 is just 1. So I have 2 wholes with 1/72 left over. The screenshot of this website from Maths First has been posted to Edmodo in the progress monitoring folder. So after you complete watching this video, you might want to go back to Edmodo, click on the link, and do some online practice. It's really nice. It gives you a new exercise, allows you to go through the steps, and then checks your answer as right there for you to know whether or not you were successful or not. On this last slide, I'm going to encourage you to try these 4 problems. One's addition, one's subtraction, one has multiplication, and one has division. Once you've tried these 4 problems, you can go ahead and send a message to me through Edmodo letting me know your answers. But remember, save your work, and that way if you've made mistakes, I can get back to you and we can check to see where you need to make changes to be more successful. Thanks for watching, and remember, you've got to make progress with progress monitoring.